Hello, and here we are back with part 20 now, and I do hope that these videos are continuing to, keep you interested in the way that, like I've said before, I just want to keep it going and be looking at as many things as possible. That I often think that, things are missed out or things aren't completely covered or things are very one-sided out there, I mean, there's a lot of great documentaries and things, already there that but to people like me, we'd watch it and think, well, yeah, I know all that, I've heard all that before. They might be good to somebody who's never heard of it or doesn't know very much, to kind of say, oh right, well, I feel a bit more clued up now, I've seen that. But they always tend to leave us hungry for more. And although I do stick to what I say, that I'm not aiming to give you any conclusive answers to anything. I don't have the facts, I don't pretend to have the facts. This is all about broadening our minds and to look at things in different ways that we perhaps haven't before. So I do want to go a bit more now into why I'm very against this word hoax. I absolutely hate the word, because I feel it's a really ugly, damning word that is very incriminating, and it's not nice. It just isn't. And the reason I feel that it's inappropriate to use here is because we're talking something that never actually hurt anyone. We're talking a story that actually gave the world a lot of entertainment, a lot of interest and intrigue, as well as some damn good frights. And so it never actually hurt anyone by the Lutz family telling their story or people taking their story and kind of taking it to new levels, as obviously happened. Yeah, so I would like to just point out a very reasonable example of what I call a real hoax, and it's something that happened in the UK in 2008. If you haven't heard of it, it's easy to look it up. It's the case of Karen Matthews, who did create a hoax, a hideous hoax, in which she claimed that her young daughter had been abducted, and all the time this young child was kept in dangerous, barbaric conditions, by her mother and other conspirators, all in the way of gaining attention, monetary gain, and really sort of jumping on some kind of bandwagon. Now that is what I call a hideous hoax. It was huge, despicable lies, putting a child in danger for the sake of gain. But when we're talking about someone who says we lived in a house that frightened us, I don't see what's so hideous and horrible about that. Whether you believe it or not, and it's always going to be a matter of opinion anyway. Depending on where you're coming from in the first place. So like I was talking about in the last video, as regards to the people of the town of Amityville, I can appreciate their anger and their resistance to it. Even though I've said that they came up between them with a lot of different things that all sort of clashed and didn't make sense when we put them all together side by side. You're like, well, hang on a minute, that contradicts that contradicts this. Some are saying they were never there at all. Others are saying the eyes in the window were just the cat. Well, if they weren't there, how were they seeing cat's eyes? Yeah, so it just all, it clashes in one way or another. But I do understand their anger and resistance when, we're talking about their home being invaded by the public. I can appreciate that. What I don't appreciate, and, I don't think I ever will, is the anger and hostility that comes from other people. We're talking, other members of the public who have no more personal connection to this case than any of the rest of us, and they will get very, very angry about it, and they will slam it, and they will talk about the Lutz family as horrible people, as though they were criminals, as though they did something really terrible. And it's just not fair. It's not right. It just isn't, because we've all got to remember that whatever way we look at it, that story captured a lot of people, and it brought us all together to talk about this subject one way or another. So it's like we say, whatever your personal beliefs are, it gave us a great story that's still fascinating people and entertaining people, I suppose, 47, 48 years later. It just is. And so we've got to sometimes ask the question, were they really such bad people for giving us this legendary subject to still be fascinated with all this time later? So yeah, it's very, very it, it's soul destroying sometimes, I feel, that people feel that they need to project such anger towards someone who they never knew personally. They can't prove or know for sure what the actual situation was, yet they're condemned as these really, really bad people. And sometimes I do feel it is a case of people jumping on a bandwagon, or the gravy train, as they perhaps say in America, in the way of, let's all just join this hate patrol. Let's just all condemn these people, and sometimes maybe they don't even know what they're condemning them for or hating them for, because it does seem that way to me sometimes. That is just, again, my pure observation, yeah. But I mean, when we talk about lies in this story and around the whole thing, I mean, there are lies on both sides. I mean, there just are, I mean, there have been lies put into this story to try and sell it as a true story. I mean, even as a believer that something really happened, that the essence of the story is real, I'll be the first to say that lies were told to ham it up, to sell it, to, really grab people's attention. But then there have been lies told against it. I mean, people will say it's a hoax, but then sometimes what we've got is hoaxes against it. We got hoaxes working the other way. We got people saying that this, that, and the other happened. They did this, they did that, and it's turned out to not be true, or at least not be verifiable. So it's an awful lot of people trying to create situations to counteract another situation, all within the same thing. And there are two figures. Again, I'm not going to mention names because I'm just not going to do that. I don't want anything coming back on me. You quite possibly know who I'm talking about anyway, if you follow this case like I do. There are two figures who've been very involved in this case pretty much from day one, and they've both jumped ships quite a lot, both of them, with their beliefs. It's like, it's a hoax. No, it was a real story. It was a hoax. No, it was a real story. And it seems to differ from each piece that goes out there. Sometimes they're being interviewed in documentaries saying one thing, then something completely different in another. And there is one in particular, one person, I mean, who I observed saying, quite some awful things, really, kind of in the way of, oh, it's not true, and it's all ridiculous, and actually making fun of the demise of Jay Anson, saying, oh, well, he didn't get to enjoy his fortune, did he? Ha ha ha. Which I found despicable, to make light of someone's demise, regardless of your opinions of them. That is, pretty, out of order, I would say. But it was this same person who seemed to create something to debunk it. Yeah, so we got someone who said it wasn't true that the house was a mess when they left it, that it looked as though a hurricane had gone through it. It was found in, perfect order. It wasn't, untidy or anything like that. Well, that was creating something just for the sake of shooting it down, because the family never claimed that they left it in a mess. They never claimed that a mess had been caused. People who went in afterwards, including the Warrens, including the reporters, including the other psychics and investigation crew, they were the ones who all said anyway, the house looked as though they'd gone out for a few hours. It didn't look like a house that had been abandoned. It looked as though they could have been back any time. So there we had an example of someone saying something for the sake of saying it's not true. That really, gave me a few head scratches, but, it's typical of what happens. You could say it's a bit like a mechanic doing some minor damage to your car to have the glory of coming and saying, oh, I'll fix that. Yeah. It doesn't make sense, but it kind of happens, yeah. So I'll be back very, very shortly to continue. Thank you. Many blessings.